We are delighted to say from German Racing Review, I hope I've got that right, we've got Ryan Ferris on the phone. Good evening, Ryan.
Good evening.
Obviously the news today, See the Moon, news of retirement. Could you enlighten us, obviously, for people watching and going forward, exactly the reasons for the retirement?
To be honest with you, I don't know the specific reason of the injury, but they've said that it's basically at the vets in Newmarket. I don't know the reason why. I mean, it's obvious he wasn't right at Baden-Baden last weekend. So obviously whatever is bothering him there is more serious than they thought. In
terms of the 11th length win in the Derby, how good do you think that was? And do you think potentially we've missed out on a great and a horse that could have actually won the Arc?
I've got no doubt that he could have won the Arc, to be honest. It's quite hard for me to talk about this horse because I had such a high opinion of him long before he was on anyone's radar. So it's quite difficult because the way he won the Derby was so emphatic. I mean, it's left a mark where you just don't know how good he was. It's impossible to say. For every argument for how good he was, people find an argument as to how you could crab perform.
And sorry, Ryan, you said you obviously watched the horse before it was everyone's radar. Enlighten us before, obviously, we saw it, emphatically win the Derby, but how did the horse start its career and develop?
It ran in a maiden at Cologne last year, in September. It actually beat Novelist's half sister, and it won by about 4 lengths. Was as green as grass that day, and it was one of them ones. As soon as I saw it, I just really liked the performance. I actually booked flights to Hamburg for the Derby after that, just so I could see it win the Derby. That was the impression it gave me on that day. So for me, it's always been a horse that I thought a lot of. It then ran in a Group 3 at Frankfurt. It had to lead the whole way, essentially. It was on soft ground, and it won very comfortably, despite sort of leading, and it's his first run of the season. And it wasn't visually that impressive, but based on how he had to do it, it was very impressive. And then his next start was in the Union Rennen at Cologne, which was a Group 2. He drifted badly left-handed that day, but he still won sort of 4 lengths going away at the line. And again, it was one of them. It was a very strong race on paper beforehand, and he essentially annihilated them that day. Again, having to do it the hard way from the front. So he always had a big reputation before he even saw the racecourse in Germany, and everything he did on the racetrack just confirmed everyone's belief.
Well, Ryan, what kind of horse was he physically? I mean, walking around the paddock before these races, would he really take the eye and think he looks like a really good sort, or not?
To be honest with you, before the Derby, there was a point where he was quite close to Geoffrey Chaucer. And in comparison, he actually looked like a 2-year-old, just in terms of he had a lot of physical development to do. So what we saw this year in the Derby, I don't think was anywhere near what he actually could have been, because he had so much growing and development to do. So it really was impressive, because in the Derby itself, he got so worked up in the stalls before the race. I sat down at the start and I thought he'd lost the race there, because he's in the stalls for about 4 minutes and was really playing up. He's then obviously jumped out, led, keen, and has pulled the whole way through the race. Then he's lost all the ground by switching to the stand side, and he's never really come off the bridle, and he still won 11 lengths. So despite doing all of the sort of racehorse things wrong, that just his natural ability got him through. And I think what he did that day has been very much underestimated. I don't think he's in any way flattered, and it's a real shame, because we just won't know how good he really was.
I mean, obviously it focused more on the attention now to see this, the sire, see the stars, and we've had Tigruda, we've had Shamakir, and See the Moon, just to highlight a few. And in relation to See the Moon, we've obviously been taken away from the fact that we've got a great horse in our hands. I mean, presumably now there's attentions in Germany will turn to other horses. Anything else that we should be looking for?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put anyone off Ivanhoe in the Arc. For as much as I think See the Moon wasn't himself at Baden-Baden, I think they would have left a bit to do on Ivanhoe that day, and they would have, the Arc's been on that horse's agenda as well, and everyone was saying sort of surprise horse, Whip beats See the Moon, but Ivanhoe last year in Germany had a very lofty opinion. He was a really short price for the German Derby, and he just ran no sort of race that day. I think he had a bit of a foot injury or something. I could be wrong saying that. But, he's had a massive reputation in Germany, and he's sort of just starting to fulfil it. And I think the way the Arc will be run will probably suit him quite well. And, I think he's a very much an underestimated horse, and I think he's around 14-1, and personally I'll be helping myself to them odds.
Now, some people would underrate the value of the German Derby form, but I mean, See the Moon is the third consecutive win of the Derby with the down by Monsoon, predecessors Pistorius in 2012 and Lucky Speed last year. So this is a good sire. And in terms of German racing itself, can it be taken seriously, the actual quality of racing? Or, because we've got this sort of, I think, attitude in the Great Britain and that we've got the best racing. Does German racing stand up?
Well, a lot of people have said, he only won the German Derby. But the only sort of collateral form you can go through is you've got a horse in fifth in the German Derby called Wild Chief. He was beaten 15 plus lengths, and he actually finished 4 lengths behind the Grey Gatsby in the French Derby. So everyone keeps saying, we only won the German Derby, but you look at that, he's finished miles clear of a horse that was pretty close up to the Grey Gatsby.
And let's not forget, I think, am I right in saying in 2012 Novelist came second?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so it does obviously provide top quality horses. In terms of the German racing season now, I mean, what we've got left between now and the end of the season to look forward to?
It's actually the German St. Ledger on Sunday.
Okay.
There's a nice filly entered in the race. I'm not sure if she's definitely running. She's called Virginia Sun. She's been crying out for this step up in trip, and I think it will really suit her. She's a horse I like a lot, and I'll be very interested in watching her if she actually does line up on Sunday. There's also in November, there's a Group 1 at Munich, and there's also a Group 1 at Cologne, I believe, in a few weeks. So there's still big races coming up. And, on GermanRacingReview.com, we'll be previewing all of these races sort of as and when they turn up. Yeah,
I was going to say that, Ryan, before you go, in terms of yourself, what do you do at German Racing, and where can you be found? You just explain where you can be found, but maybe a little bit more detail.
So basically, our website is www.GermanRacingReview.com. We've got, a lot of the German races with full English commentaries, analysis of the form and the pedigrees. We also do previews to all the big races each weekend. So, if you ever want to read about the German racing, we'll have stuff on our website. Our Twitter feed's there as well, which is @GermanRacingRev. And, we try and keep it up to date with all the latest news from Germany. One quick point I was going to say is Lucky Speed's actually by Silvano, so he's not by Monson.
Right, okay. I wonder if anyone would have noticed, but I mean, it's a good job that you were able to do that. Thanks very much indeed, Ryan. Go on,
no problem at all.
Okay, fantastic.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. I mean, before the See the Moon run, had run, we hadn't really noticed too much about the horse, but that sort of victory, we don't know whether that was the ground that Simenon found. He said it drifted left beforehand, or whether, the second actually came out and won a race afterwards. But Well, it's one of those conundrums now, isn't it? We'll never know. We would have liked to have seen that horse against some of the best in Europe.
Absolutely. I mean, Ryan's saying that the horse wasn't, physically maybe that strong, so it would have been great to see a bit more development and see where he could go. It is a shame, but, he's not lost his life. He's still with us, and it'd be interesting to see what comes out of, hopefully, a stud career.
And over the weekend as well, some other news in terms of other horses. I mean, Kingman, it looks like it might not be engaged. We had Australia beat. What do we think about the ride from Joseph O'Brien? I mean, I've looked at it several times. I must say that people sort of mocked my idea that I didn't think it was necessarily a bad ride. Your views?
First off I thought, he's kind of got himself beat there. I watched it again and I thought he hasn't really done anything wrong. I mean, he travelled well into the race. You can say, looking back, he went a bit early and say, he's let the horse go, he's given Ryan plenty of time to collect his horse.
As a turn comes, the Grey Gatsby is stone bonkers last. Ryan Moore's got him switched off, 2 lengths behind. You can argue that Joseph O'Brien has gone wide. But if you look at the horse's movement on the Great Gatsby, he's come inside on the home turn, and then what Ryan has done, he's come around the outside of Australia to get Australia done on the line. Now, horses are not in, some people I'm sure they talk for their wallet, but I know that they've come out and said, he's actually criticise himself in some ways, but I don't. They're beating up himself over.
I mean, the truth is, any race you can watch, and you can say, well, hang on a minute, if that jockey had made a mess of that, then he wouldn't have won the race. It could be any horse. You can say, well, look, if that one was a bit unlucky in 7th, if he'd got a clear run, he might have won. So you can always say that. Yes, looking back at it, Joseph went a bit early. It's very harsh to say that he did anything really wrong.
He went early at York and won. You can argue that another great horse this year, Tagruda, went too early under Paul Hannigan, and the same story happened. Ryan Moore is world class.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the criticism that Jamie Spencer might get for being too late, being astride too late. To be honest, you're better off being astride too early. And when you're a jockey, I'm not a jockey, but I know
you look like one though.
I don't know, I do, but you don't.
No, I absolutely don't. I look like a horse.
You've got to make split-second decisions. Australia's travelling well. Do you disappoint the horse? Do you sort of hang on to him a little bit? And, maybe Ryan always had him in his sights, always had time to collect his thoughts and decide when to go. So, if you run the race 10 times, you get different results. But, looking back, it's a bit harsh to say Joseph did anything wrong, in my opinion.